This is episode 40 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
And I'm Drew.
And I'm Dan.
Drew, thanks for being on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Listeners, that would be, you'll know him as Andrew Medeiros, who is the designer, one of the co-designers of Urban Shadows and a number of other games. We're going to talk about some of that stuff later today on the show. But for now, we're going to start by discussing a game that each of us has played in the last week or so. Dan, why don't you go first? What have you been up to?
The game that I'm going to talk about today is Hollowpoint. We played Hollowpoint together a long time ago, Jason.
Yeah, it was about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I ran it that time. This time I was a player in it, so I got to see kind of from the other side. So the gist with Hollowpoint is all of the characters are agents in some sort of like not actually officially government capacity, right? So you're some sort of secret agents going out and doing missions. You're hyper competent and all of that, but you're also like prone to dying just because the missions themselves are super intense. I think there's a default setting of more or less like Mission Impossible modern day style. We were running almost cyberpunk, and I think when I ran it, we played early 1930s, and everyone was Pinkerton agents.
Yeah, we were Pinkerton agents in that game. It was fun. I liked it.
Yeah, and it works equally well in all of the settings. So I think the really interesting thing about Hollowpoint, and the reason that I think it's worth checking out, is that the flow of the game is kind of like Inside Out, because the way it goes is you get to the point where you're having the whatever conflict it is, right? And so you sort of decide, well, you pick your approach that you're going to use, and all of the characters have stats in like these 5 or 6 approaches. They're like kill, terrorize, dig, take, cool, and con. And so you say like, well, I'm going to do something cool, but you don't necessarily say what it is immediately. So you say you're going to do something cool. You get however many dice that your cool stat gives you, and you roll that. And then there's this sort of aside where everyone looks at the dice they have, and you act on the order of whoever has the most dice of a single number goes first. And if two people have like, if one person has like 3 5s and one person has 3 6s, the 3 6s go first and the 3 5s. You're trying to come up with as many different sets of dice as you can, because each one of those is basically like a hit that you apply to the opposition. But whenever you use your dice, those all get eliminated from the pool, and you can absorb hits with sets of dice that you haven't used yet. So ideally, you want like a whole bunch of little low sets, like 2 1s and 2 2s and 2 3s. You don't want like 5 6s, because then you go first, and then you have nothing to block hits coming at you later.
Okay. All right.
And so you're kind of encouraged to read what the dice say and roll that into your narration of what you do. So you don't say like, I'm going to just gun these guys down. You look at the dice and you're saying, well, I'm going to try to kill people. And then you roll your dice. And if you have like a really good roll with lots of little small sets, then you're probably really efficient and you're doing a lot of things and you're killing a lot of people. And so you roll that into your narration. But if you roll like 4 6s and you go first, then you jump out and empty your clips ineffectively. And then you're sitting there exposed as they come at you. And so like it's a really interesting way of role playing, because you're not in control of what you're doing, really. It's not like I want to do this, so I'm going to roll and see if it happens. It's I roll and then I like interpret the dice like an oracle to tell me how I actually did things.
Okay. Well, what do you think about that? Is it good? I mean,
well, I like it a lot just because it's kind of a shift away from, the way we normally play. We had some people, and I think both times we've gotten it to the table, we've had people who didn't really love it. I think one of the people at the table said that he, quote, hated all of the mechanics this time. So it's definitely not for everyone.
Okay. I can't remember. The only thing I ever remember about Hollowpoint is that awesome toe tag character sheet, which is, I don't think is even an official thing. I think that's something someone else made. Apart from who was the author of Hollowpoint?
Brad Murray, I think, from VSCA or something. It's some acronym, but they've done some like Fate stuff and some settings, some like systemless settings as well.
Yeah. It's been so long since I've played it. I remember liking it, but yeah, it's just been a while. Okay, cool. Well, so I have a question. Is this a one shot, or is this something you could play out over multiple sessions?
It's pretty much a one shot, and you're encouraged not to have your character survive. The way you win essentially is you have your character, if not die, leave the fiction in some way, like satisfying some like mechanical thing that you set up initially, or some fictional thing that you set up initially. So like your character has a complication, and if their complication makes them wind up dying or like switching sides or something like that, then that's how you actually like win.
Okay. All
and
right.
then you come in
cool.
with a higher ranking character.
Awesome.
Oh, it's really cool. I like that mechanic a lot.
Yeah. And actually, like following up on that, that is another cool thing, is that the GMs kind of prepared this mission and gives you the mission briefing as if they are like whoever the control is, right, for your giant organization. But as soon as one of your characters exits and you come in with a new character, all of a sudden you outrank everybody else and you can change the mission completely, which I did, and it was awesome.
It's good. Yeah, I like it. It's good. It's good. Cool. Well, is there anything else you want to say about it, Dan?
I think that's about it.
All right, awesome. Drew, I gather you have been running some playtests, yeah?
I have. How did you know?
I don't know. I'm psychic. That's
amazing.
I consulted my oracle right before we got on.
That's fair. I did really want to quickly say to Dan that I've owned Hollowpoint for about 3 years and never played it, and I'm jealous.
You really should.
I really should. I have no excuse. But yeah, this last week I've had a couple playtest sessions of a new game that Anna Kreider and I are working on together called The Watch, which is powered by the apocalypse. Shocker.
Yeah. I didn't actually know that, so that's good to know. All right, cool. Yep.
Yeah, so The Watch is about sort of light fantasy setting, so think Game of Thrones level of magic, and it's about these people who are members of these different clans, and their area, their nation has come under attack by some unknown force called the Shadow. And the Shadow, for some reason, either possesses or drives all men it comes in contact with insane, or takes possession of them and uses them for its own purposes. So it's up to the women of the realm to take up arms and fight against the Shadow and defend their homeland.
Oh, cool. All right, that's pretty awesome.
I just wanted to point out, because I know you're a big fan of Night Witches, is that it's a sort of spiritual sequel to Night Witches.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Night Witches.
Yeah.
That was my favorite game last year. Yeah, so it's PbtA. You mentioned. Is it like playbook driven? Like, are there different playbooks, or how does it kind of set up?
Yeah, it's playbooks. We took a note from Night Witches there as well, and we decided to name the playbooks after different predators on the animal kingdom. So they have like the wolf and the bear and the spider, that kind of thing.
And what are like the, I always think that like a good PbtA game is defined, well, not defined, but like, I think its basic moves give you like a really good goalpost for like how you're supposed to play it. So like, what are some of the basic moves in that one? Like what sorts of activities are the characters getting involved in?
That's a great question. I think that the basic moves are definitely the foundation of any PbtA game. Some of my favorite moves are blow off steam. So you develop, or you start to sort of enduring more and more stress, and you got to burn that off somehow. So blow off steam is one way you do that. And that can be anything from, sparring with a partner to yelling at a fellow comrade. We also have open up to someone, right? So when you want to connect with someone and kind of basically apologize for burning off steam on them early on.
Okay.
It creates a sort of vicious cycle of venting and then apologizing and onward and onward.
All right, cool. Were there any others? Are those like the two big ones?
Those are my two favorite ones, but we got lots
cool.
of things. Asking for help is your manipulation move, so you can't really just impose your will on people. You have to come to them with your hat in your hand and ask for assistance. And my very favorite move mechanically is look someone in the eye. It's sort of a hybrid between open your brain and read a person, but it requires just looking someone in the eye, and then you roll the dice and get to find out what their intentions are. And you can build on that with different questions.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, so I feel like low fantasy, surprisingly, is not super well represented yet in Powered by the Apocalypse. I think Dungeon World covers like traditional D&D style fantasy pretty well. I know that Vincent and Meg are making Apocalypse World Dark Age, but I think that got kind of passed off to someone else. I'm not sure exactly what the story is with that. Wheeltree Press is making The Sword, The Crown of the Unspeakable Power, but it seems like it's kind of maybe like on hiatus or something. Like it's a little unclear like what the status of that game is. So I think it's pretty cool that you guys have gone with a low fantasy kind of option here. I personally think it's a little underrepresented as far as genres go in PbtA. But I may be wrong about that. Are you aware of any others? I mean,
I'm not personally aware of any others. I think that SCUP that you mentioned from Wheeltree Press is the most prevalent in the last few years.
Yeah.
But I love light fantasy. No offense to you and your Dungeon World craze, but I just burned out on regular fantasy a few years back, and I'm slowly petering back, and I feel like light fantasy is where I'm at. Yeah, Dan's got my back.
Yeah, Dan's definitely got your back on that one. Yeah, I just, I'm just stuck in my ways. That's Drew. That's all it is. I played D&D as a kid, and it's what gives me pleasure and joy, and I will always be that person. I think I can run Dungeon World 5 times a week and not get tired of it. So
I've always said that Dungeon World is well written, but it's not for me.
Yeah, yeah. I
Here.
think that's a lot of people have that feeling. Yeah, which is okay. I mean, I do think that it serves a really cool function, at least for the Gauntlet, because like we're able to, a lot of people get really hooked on our Dungeon World games, and then they like start to explore other games, you know, like they may have been coming from like a more traditional role playing game experience, and so Dungeon World's kind of like the gateway drug to more narrative focused games, and so it's been pretty cool for us in that way. But awesome. Was there anything else you want to say about the watch? Like, when's it coming out?
It's still really early playtesting. We've only had about 4 sessions of playtests so far. I would love to see a Kickstarter later this year, but more likely we're looking at 2017.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, I have been playing, Dan actually ran for us the other day. Not ran, but facilitated, I guess, Until Dawn. And this is not to be confused with the PlayStation game Until Dawn.
Right.
It's an entirely different thing. As I discovered when I was Googling Until Dawn to figure out like what this game was about, I was like, oh, I think the more popular Until Dawn is this video game on PlayStation. Dan, do you want to like say what it was about, or do you want me to?
Doesn't matter to me.
I'll take a stab at it.
All right.
So I didn't read the rules, but I played, and it seems like a pretty simple, straightforward game.
Yeah.
So in Until Dawn, it's a GM-less story game in which you have a group of kids, teenagers, who have broken into someone's house, and they are hanging out in these people's home and kind of just hanging out and exploring the house and working out their personal drama and partying or doing whatever, I guess, until dawn, right? and then they leave. So there was a movie that came out a couple years ago that starred James Franco, and it was like this exact setup. And I can't quite remember the name of that movie, but I've seen other movies like this too, like, you know, kind of disaffected youth, teenagers who don't have a lot going on, or they're kind of like, you know, troublemakers, and they do this. They break into people's homes, or they invade some space and just kind of hang out and do teenager stuff, right? I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really great. The game has this really nice structure that I love. I love when a story game has like a pre-plotted out like structure, you know, like think Misspent Youth. It's like, okay, we're going to have a scene like this, and then we're going to have a scene like this, and then we're going to have a scene like this, because we're trying to tell this certain type of story, right? And this game has that. It starts with the first round of scenes are when the teenagers are approaching the house that they're going to break into, like kind of the stuff before they actually, you know, break into the house. And then they break into the house. And so the next round of scenes is exploring the house. And then the next round of scenes is they discover something in the house. And then it kind of takes a weird little shift, and goes into the surreal. So there's a scene of like where like surreal things are happening, which I thought was pretty cool. And then there's some other scenes, like it all kind of boils down to like, they end up being in some kind of danger, and then they have to cope with that danger, and then like the next morning the dawn comes. I thought it was really interesting. That structure I thought was really great. It led to like a real kind of like a low level like David Lynch style horror, I guess. Like not really like per se horror, more just like this is kind of a weird situation. It's kind of a dark situation, a dreamlike situation, and it's all just kind of a metaphor for our teenage bullshit, right? That was my take on it anyway. Dan, what'd you think?
Yeah, that sounds about fair.
Okay.
Did you want more than that? Sorry.
Well, sure. I mean, if you have any other thoughts on it, I mean, what'd you think? I mean, I thought our story was really great. I thought we stuck the landing on it really well.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It's another one of those games where it doesn't give you a whole lot to work with initially. It has like a very light setup where you come up with 4 characters' names and their relationships. You do like Fiasco style, like you have a relationship between the person to your left and the person to your right. And like, that's kind of it. That's kind of all you start out with. You kind of compared it to Misspent Youth, and I can see that. But on the other hand, like Misspent Youth is very drilled down to like, we have a scene that does this, and it needs to be like accomplish this thing. Whereas this is much more vague about what the purpose of the scenes are. It goes through like phases more than scenes, I would even say, because it's like 4 scenes per phase. And so like it does kind of track in that same way of like, it starts off very subtle and kind of escalates, and then there's like tension builds and then releases at the end. So I think it does like encourage good story arcs in that way, but it's definitely not like as hard and fast as like this scene, you do this, because I never felt at a loss for what to do in Misspent Youth the way I did in this. And I mean,
did you feel that way?
That can be good or bad.
I didn't really feel that way. I mean, I kind of see where you're going, like not knowing exactly what to do in the scenes. I guess, I took one look at that like list of the different phases, and just for me personally, like it immediately clicked into place. I thought, I know exactly how I think the story should go. And so, it could just be based off our personal experiences. Like maybe I've seen like more movies or something along that have kind of deal with these themes or whatever. But, I don't know. I didn't have too much trouble with it. I felt like the game gave just enough to tell the right story. But let me ask you this, Dan. I felt like the game had a very almost lurid or transgressive quality to it at times, because there were times when these kids are like going through this couple's house and they're looking at their wedding pictures, or they find the bedroom that was like supposed to be a kid's bedroom, but like they clearly stopped working on it because they had some trouble, like, actually conceiving a child. Like I thought those moments were really interesting. And I thought they were very powerful but also like a little squicky. Like, what did you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the whole premise of like, because especially like these kids are specifically going in to like steal mementos and stuff from these people. So like that's spelled out in the rules, and that's a little weird. It's kind of a weird setup. And yeah, like it's sort of uncomfortable in some ways, definitely.
I liked it though. I thought it was great. I mean, it definitely, it did feel like a little like, yeah, they had moments of like, oh, I feel a little uncomfortable about this just because, man, like these kids are creeps for doing this. But then at the same time, it was kind of counterbalanced, at least our story was counterbalanced by the fact that these kids are, they're kids. They're kind of like snarky towards one another, and they have all their stupid bullshit teenage drama stuff. And the game actually mechanically enforces like wild swings in emotion, because you have to end every scene with like a certain emotional outcome depending on certain factors, and that can change pretty wildly. So like, you might end in anger, or you might end in jealousy, or you might end in sadness or whatever, right? And I thought that was very appropriate. It's a little bit like Monster Hearts, right? Like this idea of teenagers who are kind of subject to the wild vicissitudes of their emotions and urges, So I thought that the sort of like the sort of like creepo like setup was kind of counterbalanced by like the very almost like trite, like nature of these characters' relationships. Yeah, it was good though. I liked it a lot. I don't have anything else to say about it. I thought it was really solid. It was by Wilhelm Persons. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. Where can we find that? Do you know?
He has a collection of games on drive-thru. You can get it like individually or part of a big package.
Right,
and
cool.
I've read through most of the games in the package, and they all seem pretty good.
Awesome. We'll put a link to it. Do you have anything else you want to say about it?
I don't think so, no.
All right, cool. Well, let's just go ahead and go to the next segment. Our next segment is Giving Me Life. This is where we discuss something that is not necessarily related to role-playing games, but it can be, that is giving us life. I'm going to start because mine's pretty fast. So the thing giving me life this week, there's this competition that takes place in Sweden every year. It's called Street Star, and I've only recently discovered it. They post all their videos on YouTube, but basically Street Star is a urban dance competition. So you have like the people who are doing Vogue battles, and then there are the dance hall teams, and then there's the poppers and lockers, and there's this style of dancing called walking. Just all these like really cool dances.
That
And
sounds like a great one.
It's pretty awesome. And so, it's walking, WAACK, like whacking, I guess, kind of, but,
all right.
Anyway, the reason why it's giving me life is because like lately when I just need like a boost of like positivity and energy, I just pull up YouTube, the Street Star channel, and I go watch like, two people like having a Vogue battle, and just kind of just voguing off. And, it's pretty amazing. They look like they're having so much fun. And I always get really pumped up by watching people who are really good at something do the thing they're really good at, it's called Street Star. Once you pop, you can't stop. I mean, if you go start watching those videos, you're going to want to watch all of them, multiple times. So, go check that YouTube channel out. It's pretty badass. So let's go to Drew. Drew, what's giving you life?
What's giving me life? Lately, I've been doing a lot of work on getting set up as an actual real life publisher, and it's been,
okay. What were you before?
A phony poser.
You had a very successful Kickstarter. That doesn't make you a phony publisher.
But that was part of Magpie, and that was such a great great partnership to be a part of, and I loved my experience. But now I'm trying to do my own thing, right? So I'm setting up a Kickstarter coming up soon, which I'll talk about later, and I'm thinking about setting up a Patreon, and I have friends encouraging me to do that. So I've been working on all those projects, which has kept me really busy, and I've been enjoying it, but there's just so much anxiety that goes along with it. Like, what if no one wants my stuff?
Do you ever have the thing I've always heard about, especially when people are first getting into game design, is they have like imposter syndrome, like I am not really a game designer. I am just pretending to be a game designer. Like, did you ever feel that?
Every day. No, people try and like credit Urban Shadows, and I say, no, that's all Mark. Mark did that. You like that rule? That was Mark's rule. Yeah, thanks. They compliment things I did have a hand in, and I'm like, yeah, thanks. Yeah, just.
Well, hopefully you'll get past that. I mean, I think it's a bullshit thing, imposter syndrome. I mean, I personally don't buy it. Like, I've kind of just recently in recent, like, say the last 2 years or so, have started to kind of dabble in like game design. And I think my feeling on it is I'm going to do this thing. I know what I want to execute here. I'm going to execute on it, and people will either be into it or they won't be into it. But I have the satisfaction of knowing I did it. And that's, I don't know, like I never really feel like I have to like aspire to anything, or like I have to like match something or meet something. But I also like have no intention of like making it my job. So maybe that's what the difference is, I don't know. What's cool? What's the name of your company, Drew?
Tenuously, it's Northfire Games.
Okay,
so
cool.
I'm Canadian,
Awesome.
So I got to work in that North element.
It's good. Solid name. Yeah, Northfire. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, so what do you have on the plate, like, or what do you have like in the works? Like, is it stuff we're going to talk about later, or is there anything?
Well, we'll talk about the Kickstarter soon. I think that's in our lineup of things to talk about. Yeah. And I've got a bunch of mini games I've worked on. I know about Star Wars World. Like, obviously, I can't publish that, but that's something I can sort of show off as something I've worked on, and people can look at as evidence of what I can do. So I've got a lot of small, mostly Powered by the Apocalypse hacks I want to throw out there. One of them's called Save the Date, which is about a secret agent going on a blind date with someone, and their date gets kidnapped by the evil villain, and so now they've got to save the date. So it's a wonderful play on words. Nice. It's just a fun, like, 2-hour game that I think will be a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to what you have coming out.
Thanks.
It's going to be awesome. Like, I'm not worried about it, Drew. I think it's going to be amazing.
Thanks.
So.
For the record, I do believe that imposter syndrome and the sort of elitist designer status is bullshit. But my brain still thinks about it when I don't want it to.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say, or just?
No, it's been, I guess, a good ride so far.
Cool. Awesome. Dan, what's giving you life?
I have two real quick ones. They're games with massive learning curves. So the first one is called TIS 100.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
It has no graphics. You are writing assembly code for a fake computer. The tagline is like the assembly programming game that no one ever asked for. It's great. There's no tutorials or anything. Like, you open it up for the first time and it says, hey, go read the PDF. It's an instruction manual for how to write code on this thing. And so you have to just sit down with this PDF and like read through the programming language and figure out how to actually make things work. Because there's no tutorial, there's nothing, but it's great. Like, if my job as a programmer were as simple and straightforward as like, all I need to do is take a number from here and a number from here and multiply them together. I don't care if I had to do it on like a piece of shit computer from 1950. I would love it. So that's the first one. And the second game with a massive learning curve is Puzzle and Dragons, which
I know that one. I know Puzzles and Dragons. Yeah, Puzzle and Dragons.
Have you played it?
I have, and I tell you what, I couldn't quite figure out I couldn't figure out the charm of it, for one thing, and I also couldn't really figure out what I was doing. So,
well, that's part of the charm of it. What you really need to do to get into that game, I don't know, if you're driven by the same motivations that drive me, is you need to go to the Puzzle and Dragons subreddit and just look at the weird shit on your screen and try and make any sort of sense out of anything that anyone is saying. Like, I go there and I feel like I've been playing this game for, I don't know, like a month. And I feel like I'm an anthropologist, like studying this strange, uncontacted tribe who has their own language. And like, because it's all weird acronyms. And like, the really hardcore people play the Japanese version because it gets updates faster. And so there's just a lot of pictures of like screenshots filled with Japanese like text.
Nice. Good.
And like everyone's like, wow, and like amazing, and saying how amazing all these screenshots are. I don't understand any of it, but like I'm slowly putting the pieces together, and like I'm slowly starting to understand these people and their ways and seeing the appeal of Puzzle and Dragons. So that's it.
All right. Puzzle and Dragons sounds good.
Wow, Dan, you and I have very different ideas of fun.
That's fair.
Dan's also Dan. Aren't you also into that cat thing?
I saw all the cats, so now I'm done with that.
Okay, what's it called?
I just
Nico
left them
Atsume
to die
or
now.
Yeah.
Nico Atsume, yeah.
No, they don't die. They just go to other people's homes. Like if you're not putting out the food, they just
Well,
leave.
whatever. I don't know. All I know is I don't have to deal with them anymore. So
They go to my boyfriend's house. My boyfriend's totally hooked on that game. Like he loves Nico Atsume so much. And every night, like when we're going to bed, like we're on our iPads or whatever, and I hear do 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 do. Oh God, Drew, it's this game.
Oh, I'm
like,
familiar with it.
Yeah. It's really something.
Everyone on my
it's
RPG
not even
table
like.
plays it.
I feel like it couldn't have taken longer than like 10 minutes to program this thing. Like I don't know, like it's the most like simplistic.
Yeah, that's probably
game
true.
there is. Yeah. But anyway, I just like that they're little cat buttholes are X's. I think that's really cute. It's kind of the best. All right, awesome. Let's go to the next segment. All right, so we have Drew Medeiros on, and we're going to be talking about some of the games that he's been working on and some other things in the pipeline. So let's start with Urban Shadows, because that's got to be the game that most people are going to know you from, right? It was co-designed by you and Mark Diaz-Truman, yeah?
Yep, that's absolutely right.
We've talked about it before on the podcast a few times, but why don't you go ahead and just give our listeners like kind of a 60-second overview of what Urban Shadows is?
Absolutely. So Urban Shadows is another Powered by the Apocalypse game. It is urban fantasy, so it takes place in the modern day, and it's got werewolves and vampires, and it's got wizards, but all we really care about are werewolves, right, Jason?
Yes. It depends on the type of werewolf.
That's true.
I actually am something of
Purist?
an elitist, I have a certain vision of like what I think is a sexy werewolf.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So Urban Shadows is about a werewolf and all of his friends who aren't werewolves, but are other things.
Exactly. Yes.
And so it takes place in the modern day. It's all about supernatural politics, stuff happening behind the scenes that most people who walk around the city have no idea are happening. And it's about whatever you make it about. Often it's about getting yourself out of trouble by making promises you can't deliver on, and that sort of piling up on you over time.
Awesome. Cool. The easy comparison is World of Darkness, right? I think that's what that's what I first thought of when I was going through it. The old Vampire the Masquerade and all that. Except this is like all of the different types of supernatural creatures kind of in one urban environment. Question, like what were your design goals for Urban Shadows? Like were there any particular like themes or modes of interaction that you were kind of aiming for with that one?
Sure. I'd like to point out first and foremost that I've never played any World of Darkness games. So everyone always assumes I'm coming from that place, and I just never got into it.
Yeah,
so.
I did.
Yeah. So
because when you look at it, it's like, oh, it's World of Darkness. But,
yeah, totally.
It's like the easy reference, right? Yeah.
Mark was the World of Darkness guy in our team, and I'm glad for his influence. It worked out really well. But design goals for myself were always to make a game that was exciting and obviously set in the urban fantasy genre. I've always been a huge fan of that genre. I read books upon books set in it. I've done some RPG games in it and really enjoyed myself. What was most important to me was sort of showing off that power is awesome and we want to give it to you, but it's going to come at a huge price later. Don't worry about it right now. Let it take care of your problems now. Worry about the fallout later. So I think we hit that pretty hard with corruption, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I love that corruption mechanic. I always, whenever I look at a new PbtA game and I look at a bunch and play a bunch, I always hone in on like the one thing that the game is doing that's really cool and different, right? And to me, it was that corruption mechanic. Just so listeners understand it, essentially, you do certain moves or you engage in certain things that give you like extra power, right? And am I framing that right? I think I am.
Absolutely.
And then if you, but then you have to mark a corruption, right? And as you mark corruption, though, you get like even more moves that force you, that cause you to mark more corruption, right? So, but once you hit your maximum, your characters kind of, exit stage left, right? They're written out of the story. So I think it's really, really cool. Really, really neat feature of the game.
Yeah. I've always really impressed to see people at the table playing the game and avoiding corruption like it's scary. And then the person next to them is like, give me all the corruption.
Oh, fuck yeah, we were. Oh, man. When I ran about 4 or 5 sessions of it, and yeah, it was like, oh, man, what do I have to do? I want that corruption move. That thing is fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, I know my character's on their way out, but that's all right. I always err on the of like, I think like err on the side of danger. That's what I say when in role playing. Like, cool. Well, so what were some of the challenges in putting Urban Shadows together? Like, that includes like not just the text, but also like the Kickstarter and everything. Like, what were some of the things that you guys ran into?
There's a lot that goes into a Kickstarter that I did not realize going into it. I was really happy to have Mark on my team, who's much more proficient and experienced at Kickstarter. So there's a whole slew of things I could get into about Kickstarting, but you'll just never understand it unless you do it yourself.
Okay, fair. I don't plan on it, but that's fair.
You have to have a special hate for yourself somewhere deep down. But it's really fun. I think what was tricky for us going into it, especially as we started to develop hype and anticipation, was the World of Darkness people who were expecting a certain feel. And I know that when I was writing and designing moves with Mark, that was never in my mind. I didn't care. So a lot of people come out being like, oh, a vampire should be like this, or a werewolf should be like that. And we just had to like politely decline their advice. And it got a bit tricky as time went on. But I think people ended up being pretty happy with the compromises we made there.
Yeah, I'm not a big vampire guy myself. I played it in the 90s, like a lot of people did. Mm-hmm. I never really, it was, I don't know, it was not the thing that I really landed on. I just, to me, it always felt a little, I don't know, almost like the rules didn't even matter, It was kind of like how I felt about like, this is like 90s White Wolf, vampire. Yeah. I just, and I didn't really have the vocabulary to understand what my problem with it was back then, but I know now what it is. And to me, it just felt like there were mechanics that just weren't doing much. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the vampire players that I know, they took that to the next like logical like place, and they just started LARPing, right? Like they just said to hell with the dice altogether, so but I love that Urban Shadows, like the mechanics, like I love any game that does this, but in Urban Shadows does a particularly great job at it, of like these mechanics, these moves like lead to certain sorts of scenes and certain types of fictional outcomes, and it's pretty awesome. What does the future of Urban Shadows look like? Like, are there plans to release any more material for it, like new playbooks or anything like that?
Well, we've got playbooks already slated based on our stretch goals that are almost all complete now. But what the future of Urban Shadows looks like is actually pretty exciting. I know that Magpie Games has some really great ideas. They're working on getting Dark Streets out there, which is our compilation of city guides. And city guides are just sort of they're set in a particular modern day city, and they come with fronts ready to go, or threats or storms, we call them. So as an MC, you can pick it up, read through it, and have a bunch of storylines ready to go for your players, including a bunch of prominent NPCs that you can introduce as play goes on. And we've got a book containing about 9 or 10 of those that we raised as part of our Kickstarter. So that'll be out later this year. And then we're going to move into some interesting new arenas with Powered by the Apocalypse. We want to do some faction books, so like one book per faction.
Okay, cool.
That highlights specific elements of that faction, has some new custom moves, hopefully a playbook each. A lot of just sort of.
You guys you're on your way to White Wolf 2.0.
Right, yeah.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're even talking about maybe one day doing written fiction set in the Urban Shadows setting.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a lot of exciting things. It's all still an early stage development, but Magpie and I have been talking, and it's really exciting.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, part of like this sort of like old role player in me wants more stuff for each game, like there's a part of me that wants more stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think like in the indie space, especially, there's this like tendency to just like, we put the book out and then now it's in the hands of the players. It's for the players to do what you will with it. And that's great. But part of me also just like kind of sometimes wishes like there was more, stuff like, Paul Sega's game, The Clay That Woke, for example, the text, like just makes me want to know more, like want more stuff from Paul. Like the text is so beautiful and so bizarre and weird. Like all I can think of, and I asked him this and he totally shot it down, but like all I can think of is like, I want like a bestiary. I want like a monster manual for the clay that woke, but, anyway, so I don't know. I'm behind that. I think it's great. Is there anything else you want to say about Urban Shadows before we move on, Drew?
I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, it'll always be my first baby and I love it to pieces.
Yeah, people should go check it out. Incidentally, listeners, Gauntlet UK right now is running about, I think I've got 6 sessions of Urban Shadows on the calendar, or going on the calendar soon for February and March. So go check that out. Just a little plug for Gauntlet UK. Cool. Let's move on. I'm really interested in The Forgotten. I know that's something you guys are getting ready to launch the Kickstarter campaign for. Tell us about The Forgotten. What's that all about?
Absolutely. The Forgotten is my first foray into LARPs. At least first published LARP. I've written a few fan-based ones for Battlestar Galactica and the like. But The Forgotten is a LARP, so it's live action. It's based more in the Nordic tradition with a bit more crunch added to it. So it's set in a modern-day city that's under siege, and you play survivors who are just trying to live day by day. You're not soldiers, you're just people. And you're stuck in a really impossible situation, and things are getting really desperate, and it's really hard just to find food for the next day. And you have to play out a week's time of these people's lives in the course of 2 hours. I really like it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We are right up on the line of spilling over into LARP at some point. I think Dan's got big plans for LARP, don't you, Dan?
Yeah, I've got some plans in there somewhere.
You won't regret it.
We'll see how they pan out, but
Drew, do you do a lot of LARP yourself?
I do now. I hadn't LARPed once in my life until about 2 or 3 years ago. It was actually Jason Morningstar's fault. He ran a game of the Tribunal, which I know he recommended to you.
He does,
Dreamation, and a friend sort of prodded me into playing, and I was like, LARPs are stupid. I don't want to do that.
Cool.
And then,
yeah, I'm thinking about going to Dreamation this year just to try some stuff out.
You should come.
I live right over there, so I might pop in for a little bit. But are you going to be?
I'm going to be there. I'm really excited. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You posted about that. I forgot. Yeah. Cool. So The Forgotten. All right. Cool. Well, so when does it launch? When does the campaign go?
I'm hoping to launch in February, so in about 3 weeks or so.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome. Yeah,
really
we'll be sure to post about that. That's
Thanks.
pretty awesome.
So I wanted to go back to talking about LARPs real quick. That I didn't play LARPs. I thought it was silly, but once I got into it, it was really fun. It's just like another level of tabletop, not a higher level, just a different level. And I think you'll really enjoy it once you try it.
Yeah, I think. I can't speak for, I can kind of speak for Dan.
Yeah, you speak for Dan, it's cool.
I'm going to speak for Dan. But I think we have always, at least maybe until very recently, have been of the opinion that it's something really dramatically different and requires different systems or different best practices or something. And so we've always been kind of at least for me, I know I've always been kind of I just don't want to pull the trigger on LARP until I know, because I will be expected to organize or at least be familiar. I don't want to pull the trigger on that for the Gauntlet until I know for sure that we're going to be really successful at it. But then I'm starting to come around on it. It's just basically story games, but standing up and moving around, and I don't know. Maybe that's reductive. But
that's all it is, though. We're just standing up and walking around, and we're acting it out. Sometimes for 90 minutes, sometimes for just a scene. Well, Jason, if you come to Dreamation, you should play The Forgotten with me, and that'll be your introduction.
Oh, cool.
To
Yeah, I was chit chatting with somebody the other day, and I need to check my schedule, but I'm this close to being certain I can go. So cool. I will sign up on that as soon as I'm able. Okay, so let's talk about PbtA stuff, because that's what you were known to do. The one I'm really interested in, I personally am not a human who gives a shit about Star Wars, so I'm not super interested in Star Wars world. But I like it well enough, I guess. But lots of people do. So, but for myself, I saw you mention something about a mouse guard PbtA thing, and I think that's really exciting. Is that still happening? Or
yeah, I've done up the alpha draft for it. I think I have about 6 playbooks, all the basic moves laid out. It's definitely playable, I think.
Have you put that out yet, or is that still
I have a Google community for it, and
I need to go. I'm totally off the ball.
I should get that to you. It's called Legends of the Guard, named after the third book in the Mouse Guard comic books, which I love. I'm a huge fan of the comic books. Really, really enjoy those.
Cool, sweet. Well, so question.
Yes,
I think that any role-playing game that's going to do Mouse Guard, I feel like there are certain themes and elements that make Mouse Guard. What do you think those things are? What do you think are the things that are necessary to capture from both the comic books and even the Luke Crane game, right? Because I think the Luke Crane game has become very synonymous with mouse guard as well, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you think is the essence, so to speak, of mouse guard?
Well, I'd like to also give honorable mentions to Luke Crane's Burning Wheels game of mouse guard. It's really, really good. It's so true to the feel of the books. It's just too many dice for my liking.
I don't love it.
No,
I mean, I don't mind saying I don't love it.
Paging through it and reading about it. I don't enjoy playing it.
I'm right there with you. I'm in the exact same spot. I love everything about it until I get it to the table. So.
I'd encourage anyone to buy it because it's such a good product, and even play it, and they might like it, but it's not for me. So, but get back to your question. What I think is a really important theme of mouse guard is the sort of stubborn refusal to surrender to all that nature's throwing at you. You know, these little mice, and realistically, you really can't fight back against everything, but they don't care. They still try for it because they believe in themselves and they believe that they can better their lives, and so they keep trying. You know, predators and storms be damned. They're going to prosper. And I love that. It's so awesome.
That's cool. No, that's cool. Well, so obviously I haven't looked at the alpha yet, but have you included anything that sort of captures the, like the city part of their encounters or their adventure? Because that's a big part of the Luke Crane game, right? The player's turn, right? Where like it's, okay, you're out in the wilderness, you're doing all this stuff, and now you're in the city doing city stuff. Like, are there things in place for that or what?
That's a great question. I hadn't really thought about that as I was designing. Most of the basic moves center around getting your way through the wild and dealing with the different hazards that are out there. Not to say that most of them can't easily flow through. Like you got your read a fellow mouse move and get your bearings, convincing someone. So there's plenty of stuff that you could definitely do while you're in town. But we haven't put a specific design aspect on that.
Okay, all right. And you may not need to. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of that stuff is just going to be like really good. Just RP, right? Like you're just kind of RP all your city encounters or whatever.
Yeah, but, it's a great question, though. And I've kept the conditions from the Mouse Guard role-playing game. I've just ported them into Powered by the Apocalypse. And so now they've all got their own individual recovery trigger, and you recuperate roll to see if you can get off of it. So you can still get angry and demoralized and sick, just like in the Luke Crane game. But we've just put the Powered by the Apocalypse spin on it all.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. If I could legally give you $5 American for that, I totally
would. I would love to take your $5 American because it's worth a lot in Canadian dollars. But
awesome. Let's see here. Let's move on to just kind of more general questions.
Sure.
So we've kind of made like kind of jokey reference already to the fact that you design a lot of PbtA games, or that's kind of your thing. What is it about Powered by the Apocalypse that appeals to you so much?
It's so hard to put that into words, but what a great question. I think for me, it's the simplicity of the system. Once you understand it, it can be really weird at first, and I know I experienced that myself, but once I picked up on the subtleties of the 7 to 9, the 10 plus, the misses, and then of course the MC side of things, it all just really clicked for me. I had been looking for this game my whole life and didn't realize it. Even reading Apocalypse was like, I don't get this at all, but I feel like there's something really good inside of here. And then I got to play it, and it was like, oh, there it is.
Our journey is the same. I feel the exact same way, even about Apocalypse World. I still think it's a very difficult book to read. It's so opaque, but no. Once it clicks in place, you're like, oh man, this is the role playing I've been trying to do my whole life. You know, like this is it. You know, I'm with you. Well, that's cool. Why do you think other people are so into it? Like, why do you think it's so popular to hack?
It's very approachable as a hackable game. People have already been doing this for a while, and so it's really easy to look at Avery's work and Sage and Adam's work with Dungeon World, and referencing Avery's Monster Heart, of course, and realizing that yes, you can do this too. You know, this isn't this gigantic monolithic game that you can't approach. You just got to start with your basic moves and move on from there. That being said, it is a lot of work. There's a lot more to it than you realize, but it lets you sort of step into the door, and then you can take it in and start parsing out the little pieces and moving your way. So a lot of people have started hacks, but not many have finished because it is a lot of work. But it's fun.
I think I always, whenever I pick up a new PbtA hack, I can almost always tell if the person who designed it actually plays lots of PbtA games.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but there have been some that came out, especially like in the sort of like the real like intense Apocalypse World gold rush, you know, of like a couple of years ago. Yep. There were some games coming out where it was like, I'm not 100% sure you really understand how the system is supposed to work, but okay. But I think we've kind of gotten past all that, and I think it's really exciting. Like I think it's just so cool that people are able to take this system and create brand new games out of it, that are solid and playable. And I think it's awesome.
Oh, and there's so many cool ideas people have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like, I never thought of using it that way, and just seeing the community develop these amazing mechanics to improve upon what we already have is so great.
Well, okay, so apart from Mouse Guard and Star Wars World, or apart from Mouse Guard and Star Wars, what's like your dream PbtA game? Like, what's something that's like out there that's ripe for PbtA treatment, do you think?
Oh, to like convert as a hack?
Yeah, or just a show or movie or something.
I've wanted to do Mass Effect for a long time. I love the video games.
Okay,
I think that would work okay. I have to really see it to understand if it would work or not. But that's something I've always thought about. I also think that Battlestar Galactica is perfect. I know there's a lot of hacks out there already.
Oh yeah,
like reskins. I know Sean Nittner did a reskin of it, and but I just feel like it's already set up as an apocalyptic scenario, but with a bit more with a bit more sex and awesome robots.
Absolutely. Cool. Awesome. All right. Let's see. This is something we ask every designer we have on the show. Which other designers, like which role-playing game designers do you take inspiration from? Like who's been like a big inspiration on your work?
Well, obviously Vincent Baker's Apocalypse World started me on this path. It opened my eyes to a new style of play, and I'll always be grateful to that. And so I've taken a lot of notes from Vincent Baker's work. Most notably in Apocalypse World, I've played Dogs in the Vineyard a bit, but I haven't played much of his other work, and I really need to fix that. But yeah, Baker deserves a lot of credit for inspiring me to get into the design thing. Avery McDonald's Monster Hearts was formative. I won't deny that while I was designing Urban Shadows, Monster Hearts was my template. Looking at it for inspiration and ideas. There's a sort of loose connection there in terms of genre. Monster Hearts is sort of suburban fantasy, and we took that to a different level with urban fantasy. But
it blew my mind the first time I read Monster Hearts. It was eye peeling. I was like, oh man, this is such an amazing game. It's such an
Avery
amazing text.
is a gifted writer, and she sort of took the rules and made it so simple for us to understand. So I owe her a lot of respect. Or I have a lot of respect for her work.
Hey, you know what? Props to Urban Shadows, actually. I've said this on the show before. I think even if listeners aren't interested in the urban fantasy setup of Urban Shadows, they should pick up Urban Shadows just because I think you guys did a really fantastic job of explaining some of the fundamentals of Apocalypse World-based games. There are a lot of things that a lot of the books have kind of relied on their communities to sort of figure out, and I think you guys did a really good job of laying out some of like the real like key sort of like mechanical interactions and kind of how they're supposed to go at the table. So kudos on that.
Thank you. We're really proud of the text and the reception it's gotten from players like yourself. Thanks.
Yeah.
And and I just wanted to mention, of course, Jason Morningstar is a great inspiration as well. He's always been super kind to me at conventions, and I've enjoyed talking with him there. Mostly inspiring me in terms of LARPs, as the person who got me into it, and then reading and playing The Climb and The Tribunal that he converted into sort of the anglicized version. He's been a real inspiration in that regard.
Yeah, you hit the Holy Trinity, so you're good. There. You got Vincent, Avery, and Jason. So every time we ask this question, it's always like some combination of those people. An occasional Jared Sorensen.
It may have something to do with who you're interviewing as well, though.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, I suppose if I were to ask Mike Merles or somebody, as if we could ever get him on the show, but if I were to ask, he probably wouldn't have the same answers. Or he might. I don't know. Who knows? Cool. Well, is there anything else you want to discuss? Like, do you have any like real top secret projects that you haven't talked? Like, we love scoops. Like, do you have anything like you haven't shared with anybody yet? You want to talk about?
Oh, you want some dirt?
I want some dirt. Yeah, I want the stuff that people are only going to hear about here. It could be the most proto alpha thing ever. I don't care.
Oh, I wish I had something for you. I'm pretty open out there. Oh, you know what? I will give you a little hint of something that has been on the back burner for a while now.
That's perfect.
It's a working title of Heroines, but it is a card, like a deck-based game about female superheroes defending the world from intergalactic threats. And so you play. It's set up a lot like Descent, where one person plays the villain with their deck of cards, and then everyone else plays the superhero team battling against them. So. I can say it.
Cool.
I haven't done much on it, but I'm really excited about getting it out there someday. I've got a lot of great help with that too.
Okay.
So,
yeah, awesome.
I had to dig deep, but I found it for you.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, we have a final question. Here we go. Final question. This one has a bit of a setup, so I'm going to set it up first. But it's the same setup as always.
Right.
Okay. Let's say we are making a Powered by the Apocalypse game, or a hack of Urban Shadows even, in which all the characters are sexy, smooth-chested teenage werewolves who spend their days going to class, hanging out at the mall, fooling around in the locker room shower, and so forth. At night, they go on a hunt and or make love to each other under the light of the full moon. Questions all around for us too, Dan. For Drew, what's the name of this game? And then give me 3 basic moves for that game. And then Dan, you and I are going to come up with skins and 1 move, or not skins, well, I guess it could be a skin, a playbook, and then 1 move for each of those playbooks. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Sounds awesome.
Awesome. All right, Drew, what is my game called?
First off, I want to buy this game already. We haven't even designed it yet.
I want to. Yeah, I know. I'm already figuring out ways to play it. So,
it's about sexy, smooth-chested teenage werewolves.
The best kind of werewolves.
The only kind of werewolves. Let's be honest.
Indeed, yeah. Keeping in mind that like teenage werewolves are only sexy when they're played by 27-year-old actors.
Naturally,
right? Yeah, just throwing that out there. So.
That's a given. So I want to go something really dramatic, like In Moonlight.
Okay, like that. It's good. Yeah. It's almost romantic in a way.
Almost.
Yeah.
Well, they're sexy. They're going to have some strange feelings for each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's table stakes in this game.
And writing basic moves. Oh, that sounds fun.
Okay. Yeah. 3 moves.
They're hunting at night together, so I think they should have a move for sharing a kill. So when you share a kill, cool. Blank blank, or ...
Okay. Awesome.
And they're sexy, so they're going to be gazing at each other longingly. So I'm going to go with smolder at someone. And you really draw on that intersexuality and just send it to someone with your eyes. And the last, which I think will be fitting for both the pleasure of their company and also for the hunt, I think we're going to go with Howl in Unearthly Pleasure.
Okay,
that's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That Howl in Unearthly Pleasure. That sounds like almost the opening your mind move, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. Okay, I'm going to do my playbook first, Dan, because I think yours is probably better than mine. So I'm going to do my teenage werewolf playbook is called The Bad Boy. Okay, and the bad boy, most of his moves are tattoo based. Okay, and they're all. I've been developing this all day.
Yeah, I didn't realize you developed an entire playbook already.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to having it done, if I'm being honest. Or at least alpha. So alpha wolf. No, sorry, all right, that's bad. It's called the move I'm going to share with you today is called tattoos. When you tell someone the story behind one of your tattoos in an intimate setting, possibly with erotic subtext, they choose one. They give themselves to you. They give you something they think you want, or they support you in your next attempt to become pack alpha.
Oh, so
tattoos. Good. Yes, tattoo. And I was even thinking there could be a move where you, like the tattoos you put on your body can be almost like a strings type thing where you get like emotional control over people. So anyway, that's my playbook, The Bad Boy. Dan, what's your teenage werewolf playbook?
Since I saw yours was The Bad Boy, I looked up. I was furiously Googling what the roles were in like boy bands, and to come up with another one to complement The Bad Boy.
Amazing.
So I'm getting the shy one, and so the shy one's move I'm calling Not At All Creepy, and it's when you spend 5 minutes intensely smelling a freshly worn article of clothing, you can tell who it belongs to and recognize where they've been and who they've been with for the previous 24 hours. And
that's good.
Let me tell you, I spent the most amount of time deciding how long you actually had to sniff this article of clothing for. That was the biggest source of my changes.
I like how you landed on like 5 minutes. Like it's like not 3 minutes or 5 minutes.
It's just I figured that was just long enough to be like inconvenient, so it's hard to do like surreptitiously, right? Like you really have to commit to like sniffing garments for a good amount of time to really trigger this move. So
that might be one of the best written moves of all time, Dan. You can retire.
It's pretty good, Dan. It's pretty good. Well, Drew, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
So listeners, that's our show. If you would like to get in touch with us, go to Google Plus and search for The Gauntlet, particularly in the community section of the Google Plus, and search for us there and you'll find us. We do all kinds of discussions. You can chat with us, chat with other people in the community. The conversation is always going in The Gauntlet. So go find us there. We also run a ton of freaking games. We are in so many games. I think we're up to like 50 or something on the calendar between like from today and March, through March. So many games on our gaming calendar, and they are available for you to come play in. So you will find us on Meetup there. The link to our Gauntlet Hangouts Meetup, these are all online games, can be found in our community as well. So come play a game with us. We are also on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. Yeah, thanks again, Drew. Dan, thanks so much for being on as well and doing the stuff you do.
Yep.
And listeners, thanks for listening. There could be somebody going to your and April's house like every day, and like
I know, yeah.
Your dog might think he has a different parent and wonder
right.
where
He has
they're
like
at,
he has like a daytime family. Yeah,
exactly.